I'm very excited to introduce a movie that is very dear to my heart, and not just a piece of art, but just as a way to visit my hometown, and in a way to visit my childhood, and to visit my memories of my parents and grandparents, because they are not with me anymore, but they used to take me to the Hermitage almost every weekend. That was a thing to do on a cold winter day, to go to the Hermitage because it's warm and it's beautiful. And that's what you will have an opportunity to see today, and we'll do it together. And when Michael kindly asked me to introduce the movie, I got all excited, and I thought, well, I'll do more research, and of course I know my history, but I'll go Google an Encyclopedia Britannica in my bookshelf and decide what facts to bring you. And then I thought, a lot of people who are interested in this sort of movie probably know some facts or can Google the facts themselves. So the value that I think can bring to this movie is how personal becomes political, or in other words, how personal becomes history. And you have mentioned War and Peace, and of course it's a pity that we can't have War and Peace, because I read War and Peace like maybe 100 times, and I read it every year. And these days I have favorite parts. And these days my favorite part actually is an epilogue to War and Peace, for which Tolstoy was accused of different things, of being a bad philosopher, of being a bad writer, of being this and that. But basically the essence of the epilogue is that it's a question in the European literary tradition. It's not an answer, but it's a question. Whether the history is created by people, by certain people, like Napoleon or Kutuzov in War and Peace, or tsars and tyrants, like in the movie that you're going to watch, or by modern day tyrants like Putin, or whether it's a daily life of daily people that's happening, people like us sitting here munching on some red peppers, and history is happening. And I think this is very much is the theme of this movie, and that's probably why Sakurov took this approach. I don't think it was to show off the ability of the cameraman, who is a very capable man, having shot, run, but I don't think that's what the point is. The point is that history doesn't take any breaks, it keeps happening, and just like in our life, things are actually mixed. They're mixed in our memory, and they're mixed in every day, and the chronological order might be something that we are imposing on the life in order to understand it. I think that's what the movie is about. And what I like about Russian and European, especially movies, especially classic movies, that they almost never give you a real answer into your face. This is how it is. This is what it's going to be. It's not a propaganda movie. It starts with a question like, where am I? What am I doing here? It ends with a question. Where are we going? And this is an eternal question. All of them are actually eternal questions. And I don't know if there is an answer, and everyone can have an answer. Nobody might have an answer. So that's a little bit like generalizing how this movie comes across to me as the philosophical message. But going back to more interesting things, I think life is created for me as a story writer, storyteller. It's a story, many stories within one story, like dreams within a dream, or stories within a story. And the Hermitage, how many of you have had a chance to visit Russia and been to the Hermitage? So some of you, it's wonderful. And even if you haven't, you might have been, hopefully, and I know you've been to museums or to some cultural places that encapsulate time in them. It could be Louvre, it could be the Legion of Honor here. So each hallway, each corridor, each mirror in the Hermitage, for me as a child, had a story. And as a small child prone to fantasies, I would always walk around, you know, until, after the tour guide, and imagine how I would stay at night here at the Hermitage, just hide behind some column, and then hide into they had this huge vase made of green granite. from the Urals. And I would imagine that I would hide there in the middle. Sometimes if it was a whole class excursion, I would imagine I would hide there with a boy I had a crush on, and all alone. And then I would like peek in from this vase, and the vase was huge, bigger than the screen, and peek down, and at night when the lights are going down, there would be all these grand dames and Catherine II, and they would wear this immense hats and unimaginable skirts and beauty marks. And of course I was a little Jewish girl, and each time we would go to the Hermitage, I would ask my father afterwards, is it possible that our ancestors were kings and queens, or can I be a tsar? Is it no, Jews were never kings or queens, it's not possible. So of course, you know, you imagine that, yes, I can, and I could see all them playing. So when I saw this movie first time, I think back in Russia, maybe already here, my first feeling was being offended and jealous because somebody made my dream happen. he hid behind his column and shot the movie. Then I was like, okay, well, I couldn't have possibly done it. I probably could have written a story, but I didn't, in fairness. I checked after we talked. I haven't written anything about the Hermitage yet. But Sakurov did, fortunately for all of us. So, and then, like I said, there are hallways, there are corridors, then mirrors, and when you look at each object there, you imagine what could have happened. And throughout the movie, there will be occurrences that, unfortunately, I think mostly will be meaningful to either Russian scholars or Russian people or movie critics, or maybe just Russian people, because we lived with that, we grew up with it, sort of like Woody Allen's movie Midnight in Paris. When you know, it's like a little populist, you look at it like, oh, this is Hemingway, I recognize him, I'm intelligent, I know people, this is Man Ray, yes. So this is like this sort of feeling, you see, and like, oh, this must be Peter the First, I recognize him from the back of his head, or this is Catherine II, and she's young now because she still speaks with a German accent, because she actually was a German princess, she wasn't ethnically Russian, like most Russian tsars. Oh, and this is Catherine II again, but she's older here now, and she mastered her Russian language. You can't hear the accent anymore. Or like a pretty horrible occurrence. One time you open the door and there's a memory of the war, which I think is handled without the disclosure of what is happening, but not just very skillfully, but with an immense tact to history and to tragedy. Because what you will hear in Russian and which you will read in English, people are saying to each other, don't go there, don't go there. The things that you see there are too horrible. And for me and my family, it was like, don't go there, because my grandmother's family, all of them starved to death in St. Petersburg. And she would very rarely speak about it, but she would eat absolutely everything. She would eat the sticks from the apples and crumbs from the floor. And she was an educated woman. She was an engineer. She had a milliner and she had glassmates. But she, you know, because that's the tragedy. Don't go there. Don't talk about that. But it came across. I grew up with that. So for me, the fact that it only shows for a couple of minutes and there are no details, is actually, that's the way you pay dues to the horrors of the history. And so I can go on forever about the little things that come across. I mean, the stories are amazing. Throughout the movie, I want to mention two more stories, because I think they are exciting. How many of you have you heard about Pushkin, Alexander Pushkin? Yes, most people. I mean, I wouldn't blame you, and I hope actually that you have not read him in English, because he is completely untranslatable. I was trying to find the right translation to read today, and forget it, it's just not going to happen. It's just like trying to play Mozart on electrical guitar, or worse, much worse. It's just not going to happen, because he's so musical, and everything he says is in the Russian language. If you translate it, I think in fact Balzac, having read the translation of Pushkin, said, oh, your dear poet is flat. So I didn't want to do it to you. But throughout the movie, you will see a shot of statue with somewhat, as you say here, African-American features, but actually African features. This is the greatest poet of Russia, Alexander Pushkin, the sunshine of Russian poetry, whose great-grandfather was brought to Russia from Africa. Nobody knows exactly from where, either Ethiopia or Cameroon. And he started the whole noble clan of gadabouts, and that's how Pushkin came to live. And so he's chasing throughout the hallways and the ballrooms his future wife, Natalia Goncharova, who actually became the cause of his death, because in the great Russian tradition he was shot to death at a duel by a person who was accused of having an affair with his gorgeous wife. So it's all very dramatic, and you will see them, they don't say much, but you see them chasing around. And then also there's small connections that make this movie especially valuable to me as a Russian, but I wanted to share it with you. The oldest daughter of Pushkin, who's chasing the young girls throughout the hallways, and this girl, Maria, was actually a prototype for Anna Karenina, for Leo Tolstoy. So it's all connected. All history is connected there. You can't take one story at a time. There will be a long and seemingly borderline boring scene, and they say themselves in the movie, it's a boring ceremony. We are about to see a very boring ceremony. And what happens, there's a delegation of a foreign country in front of the Russian Tsar Nicholas I, and actually they are there with apologies because another Russian poet, Griboyedov, is killed by the Persians in Tehran. So when you know all this story, it's very dramatic, all Shakespeare works. It makes the movie expand and make it even richer and richer, but I believe it's so visually rich and so beautiful to look at that even if you don't catch every single one of them, because I know I don't catch all of them, there is a lot of history moments that I simply don't know, you still get the feeling of this wonderful dream of history that carries us along. And I want to finish it with the ending. I think this movie gets a special significance these days because, again, of course it's close to my heart, and I don't know how aware you are of the situation in Russia these days, but unfortunately after the short spell of light we have a lot of darkness again, and there's another tyrant who is at power in the other capital, in Moscow. And I think about this movie, when I'm going to watch this movie, I know I'm going to think like, you look at all these tyrants and despots, and they think that they are in power, they think they are ruling, and they think they know where they're going. But that's the whole idea of the Russian arc. It's flowing by itself, it's floating somewhere, and no tyrant, no despot can steer it anyway. It's an illusion. We are all in this time together, and I think the meaning, the additional meaning of the title is that Russian art is in the main art museum. All these artists, that's what's going to steer us to light. Us, meaning not just us as Russians, but us as people. So that's my take on the Russian arc, and I think you should watch it now. It would be much better than